Who was the worst house guest you have ever had to deal with? My son invited a kid to his graduation party to be nice, because he didn't really have friends. While they were all watching a movie, I watched in horror as this fucking kid picked his zits and wiped it on the couch pillow. He even unzipped the pillow and wiped copious amounts of face goo inside the pillow. I threw it away after he left. That is disturbing. That's disgusting. I would have freaked out. What the hell is wrong with people? It was so awful that I couldn't react. I just kept envisioning myself torching the whole couch. I had a few friends staying with me for a couple days. One night we all got home and one dude wanted to watch the NHL highlights, so he took out his iPad and was watching. I told him to just broadcast it to the Apple TV so everyone could watch. That was that. Fast forward like 3 hours, 6 of us grown men are now deep in a YouTube K-hole of watching people fall off treadmills and hurt themselves in comical ways. NHL iPad dude says, "I'm gonna go use the bathroom," and no one really cares. Well, about 5-7 minutes later, we are in the middle of some comical video of someone's misfortune, and suddenly the screen switches over to some mid-90s lesbian porn. The 5 of us just dead stop, look at each other and just instantly know what happened. NHL dude just went to overtime shootout mode. He was in the bathroom with his iPad and forgot to turn off the broadcast mode. We all are laughing so hard that no sound is coming out of our bodies. I changed the Apple TV so fast as to interrupt the signal and put on a new video. Dude comes out at least 15 minutes later, sits down for 5 seconds and goes, "Welp, I'm going to bed." I think I might be too late, but I'm going to post this anyways. When I was younger, my family had to take in foreign exchange students to make some money. It was usually a pretty fun experience and I got to learn a lot about other cultures. One student from Japan came. He was very shy and awkward around us. It's pretty common for the Asian students. I'm assuming it has to do with their culture. So pretty much the only times anyone would see him out of his room was when we were eating. After a couple of weeks of him staying with us, my dad found holes in the wall in our living room, which we later discovered he had been stabbing our walls, and after he blamed me for it, I was 9, we asked that he doesn't stay with us anymore, and he left. The only thing we had left to do was clean out his bedroom because there was another student coming. It turns out that he left as a present for us. Underneath his sheets was hundreds of tissues, covered in yellow semen. We were unable to follow up or let anyone know, because for some reason, the Japanese have a special coordinator set up and she refused to inform the parents of the student and the house he was going to be living in. We had a Japanese exchange student too, and she started her period for the first time ever while in our home. She locked herself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out until we called the coordinator, who then called every single other Japanese female student over so they could convince her she wasn't dying. My poor dad, who already had 3 daughters, now had about 15 Japanese girls, all yelling at Yuki through the bathroom door. I thought he was going to move out. On a side note, they brought the nicest gifts. Man, what's with these animals that hoard their cum rags? It's a used tissue. Throw it in the trash. Ain't no one gonna know you didn't blow your nose in it. This didn't happen to me but my friend. We were in high school and having an obligatory party at her house while her parents were out of town. We invited a bunch of guys from another school because she had a crush on one of them. The next day we are cleaning up and notice that her bathroom smells, but figure it's from the night before. Her parents get home and all is good. A few days later, the smell is still lingering, so her dad decides to really investigate. He comes out of the bathroom holding a Slurpee cup full of shit and yells, "Why is there a Slurpee cup full of shit behind the toilet?" Yes, one of the guys had shit in a Slurpee cup and left it behind her toilet, where it festered for days before being located. My ex-roommate, for some reason I can't remember, said we were going to have a couch crasher for a couple weeks while he got set up. Since we lived in Hawaii, this is actually far more common than the mainland, so I was fine with it. He contributed absolutely nothing and ended up staying 8 weeks. One day he brought home 4 $1 sundaes from McDonald's for all of us. He would later use this incident as evidence that he bought us groceries once. Finally he gave up and moved off the island. He told us he was leaving on a Friday, so I was full ready to show him out the door. He tells me Thursday he moved his flight to Sunday to save a few bucks. I started storming at him but was stopped by my ex and just told to leave it alone. He then asked my ex where he was taking him for his send-off dinner. So my ex, our other roommate, and I marched right over to the adult store and bought a huge 12 inches dildo, and the day he left, put it precariously into his carry-on, knowing full well his mother would unpack his stuff. We dropped him off at the airport and mysteriously we never heard from him again. Ah man. Looks like I came late to the party. I have a perfect one. My old roommate needed a place to crash, as he'd gotten kicked out of his new apartment that I helped him get as a reference. My wife and I are both very good friends with him. I had already left for work and he was asleep on the couch downstairs. My wife comes down about an hour later and startles him. He's asleep naked on our couch. He gets up, realized he's naked and then grabs the blanket to cover up. We had a talk, where my wife and I both explained that you can't sleep naked on your friend's couch. He tried to tell us that we were being ridiculous, because the sheet was a good enough barrier to keep his naked body from touching the couch. Then 2 weeks after he leaves, my wife starts noticing bites on her legs. Bedbugs. He gave us motherfucking bedbugs. It took us months to get rid of. My wife cried almost daily there. For a little while she was so stressed. We ended up getting all new living room furniture because of it. Now, we love the guy. He's dopey at times, and we knew that going in. We just didn't realize how painful of a situation this would have caused. That said, he paid the exterminator's fees over the course of 6 months, and he genuinely felt horrible. So he's not a bad guy, just a dumbass sometimes. We had some family friends stay over one weekend. It was midsummer, so we had a barbecue and everyone had a good catch up. Lovely people. In the middle of the night I went to the toilet. I lifted the lid and was greeted with one of the worst sights I've ever seen. The toilet water was murky. The back of the toilet was pebble dashed in shit. Really unhealthy looking shit. Looked green almost. I couldn't fathom how someone could leave a toilet in that state. I knew it wouldn't have been any of my family, so I put it down to the guests. I went back to bed. When I woke up, I went looking for my ma to tell her about what I had witnessed. I remember being excited about telling someone. I think I was just glad I wasn't the culprit. She had seen it too. We traded descriptions. A few hours pass and we are seated at the table having breakfast with my parents' friends. The husband pipes up and informs the table that his stomach is feeling bad, so he will just have a slice of toast. I look up at my ma, on the edge of my seat ready to tell the table about the shit and that it must have been his. My ma shakes her head and asks me how my food is. I didn't say a word, but I know it was you, Keith. My grandpa was visiting us for a day and I was ill, had fever and also I was in bed, resting. After we all ate lunch, I crawled back into my bed. 5 minutes later, he came into my room, kicked me out of my bed and started to have a nap. My mum came to my room to check on me a few minutes later. She found me laying on the floor next to bed and kicked him out of my bed. Told him to leave. I was like 10 years old then. Edit, never thought I'd get this much response. Someone mentioned about dominance and yes, you're exactly right. My grandpa is useless but believes men runs the world. My grandma only had 2 daughters and he was pissed. Eldest sibling is always the best, but my mom, youngest, being brighter than the eldest pissed him off. Then my mom had me, the daughter, and my little brother. He was pissed with my arrival but ecstatic with my brother. He tried to control my brother, but he couldn't because he was growing old and my parents and grandma interfered with it constantly. I was weaker than him, so I was an easy target for him. He did so much more than taking my bed, like he tried to run me over with his car. But that's another story for another time. Edit 2. Couple of people asked about the car story, so here I go. My grandpa was driving and sped up, braked in front of me in a mall parking lot as a joke. One day he took me to shopping and it was extremely boring for me, because he only shopped for himself and he made me carry everything he bought. Once we got back to his car, he had me put everything away in the trunk and as soon as I closed the trunk, he drove away. WTF. I was confused, didn't know what to do so I just stood there, lost. But he came back few minutes later, laughing and saying you didn't really think I'd leave you, did you? I was upset but happy he came back so I reached for the door. And I missed because he moved the car forward. He did that few more times and drove away, again. WTF number 2, I was crying at this point. Then I spotted something on the ground. It was my Angel Pocket Polly Pocket. I must have dropped it while I was chasing the car. I started to walk toward it and I saw him coming this way. Next moment my butt was on the ground and the car stopped right in front of me with loud screech. He sped up and braked to scare me. I sure was scared alright. I thought he was going to run me over. I was crying uncontrollably. He told me to shut up and get in. As we were leaving the parking lot, he said you're no fun. It was just a joke. I sure had fun. My grandpa is an ass. Last summer, I was in another city doing a clinic internship, and a few friends asked me if they could use my apartment to crash for a few nights. During a festival that was going on back home, being the nice person I am, I said of course and prepared everything for them, made the beds, cleaned everything spotless, stocked the fridge with food and even stocked up my minibar for them. I told them they should feel at home at my place. They could use whatever they want, including TV, PS4, sound system, etc. The only thing I kindly asked them not to touch is my record player. It was new and super valuable to me. I talked to my landlord, who's also my neighbor and a pretty good friend, about it and he was totally cool with it. They get there. By then I was already dosing my clinic rotation. Everything's great. Check up on them daily to see if they need anything, etc. I asked them to leave my keys with my landlord upon departure. Friend tells me he did. I come home that day with 20 missed calls from landlord. Turns out the friend didn't drop the keys off, and my landlord let himself into my place. Friend left the door unlocked and I gave my landlord permission to do so, and almost had a heart attack upon seeing the state of my place. There was trash everywhere, cigarette butts all around. There were wet towels bunches up in every corner of every room. Some of my clothes had been taken out and thrown around. Food was left out rotting everywhere, and worst of all, they left my record player uncovered, with a record playing, and there was trash on top of the record. Landlord sent me pictures and I was livid. He had to call in a cleaning service to sort out the mess and take all the trash out himself. I immediately contact my friend asking him what the fuck, and he told me they had left my apartment completely in order, making up lies that my landlord maybe caused the mess. I told him that he needed to reimburse me for the cleaning fees and all that, and that I expect him to drop off the key, which he kept. The next day when he got back to the city I was doing my internship in, dude reschedules on me 6 times about giving back the key. Guess he was embarrassed too, but at least he ended up paying the cleaning fee. Anyway, I get back home a few weeks later and everything seems in order. I go to inspect my stuff and lo and behold, somehow they broke the stylus, cartridge and needle on my record player. It was a really expensive model too. I cried out of frustration. That's what I get for trusting people. Needless to say, we're not friends anymore. My wife invited her younger sister, who had recently turned 18, over to stay with us for a few weeks, due to some issues at her mom's house. I have had issues with the sister in the past, as she has difficulty accepting responsibility for her actions. Everything is everybody else's fault, never hers. So I'm not exactly happy about her staying with us, but she's family so I play nice. A couple weeks turns into nearly a month and a half, and things are degrading. She stopped taking her medication and was growing more unstable by the day. She got mad that we asked her to help us buy the food that she was eating, even though we had told her ahead of time that we would need her to contribute. Tensions rose, and the situation was rapidly getting worse. On the final day, my wife was getting angry at the sister, who was rather unstable by now. The thing that set it off started with a cup. The night prior, one of our cats peed on her being. Instead of waking either my wife or myself to get another set of linen, she takes my son's blanket and gives him the piss-soaked one. Naturally, my wife and I were furious when we found out, and told her she needed to leave by Friday. This took place Wednesday morning. By lunch if that same day, it had reached the tipping point. The sister had placed a cup of water on the living room floor, while she played on her computer. My wife asked her to pick it up and put it on the table, so my 3-year-old son didn't knock it over, but the sister did not listen. Lo and behold, it gets knocked over just like my wife had said it would as my son was playing on the floor. The sister flies into a rage, smacking my son and yelling at him for an accident that was her fault. My wife gets very angry at this, yells at the sister, and is told by same sister to fuck off. My wife takes our son and retreats to our bedroom to call me, in tears of frustration and rage. Hearing this, I immediately tell my boss that I have urgent family business to take care of, and leave work to sort this out. I arrive home to screaming, as my wife and her sister argue loudly. I step in the middle and ask everybody to calm down. Sister storms off and slams my door in my home. I get the full story from my wife and go to address the issue with the sister, trying to keep my calm. The sister screams at me, in my own home, to get the fuck out. Up until this point, I had been very forgiving and understanding, but being disrespected like that, by a guest in my own home, was more than I could bear. And then she hit me and tried to lock herself in a closet. I don't know how, but I kept calm and informed her that she had until 1700 that day to pack her bags and get ready to leave. I would be collecting her and her things and taking her to the airport. She tried to argue, complaining about how her ticket wasn't for another 2 days, trying to use the fact that she had bought food as leverage beverage, everything under the sun. As it turned out, she was packed and gone by the time I got home. So, yeah, that was the most disrespectful and insulting thing that has ever taken place in my home. Reading that made me want to beat the shit out of her. I would have thrown that bitch out the second story, with her shit flying behind her. Hitchhike to the airport, bitch. You're gone. He stole our car in the middle of the night. He was staying with us for a couple of weeks. I was studying late at night and heard a car horn. I looked out my bedroom window and the car my brother and I share was gone. I panicked because I drove it last and thought I didn't lock it. Apparently, the kid planned it. He left a pillow body under the sheets where he was sleeping. He lit a candle and used that for light to find the keys. We had candle wax on our floors and he left his shoes by the door to make us think he was still at our home. He made his escape through the basement window. When he realized the cops were following him, he ditched the car at a neighbor's house and ran. Somehow he managed to crawl back into our basement window. My brother and I were in the house when he crawled back in. My parents were in the garage. He kept saying he was here, in our home, the whole time. He left in the cop car. My old roommate's brother drunkenly beat off on our apartment roof. In a sleet storm on New Year's Eve during the fireworks show. He said he wanted to bust the first nut of the new year. I'd like to believe he succeeded, but I went inside. The man sounded like he had a plan, can't fault him for that. With that out of the way, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want more content to keep appearing in your subscription box. Thanks for watching and until next time.